I was offered like 14 bottles of water within 5 minutes of when I arrived in Joplin because people were just stopping on the streets and wanting to do something. And I think a lot of the money and resources that flow in, and that's one of the questions I have for you. I know that you've started this, the Business Recovery Fund and the Joplin Tomorrow Fund, and we've just got a grant that Senator Blunt and I were able to announce from Commerce. It's going to help fund a regional and local coordinator for the business recovery effort. But I'm a little worried about all the money flowing in to help, and is it getting to the right place? And is it accessible by the business community? Or are there charities that have popped up saying that we're taking assistance for Joplin that maybe isn't getting to Joplin? Do you see a problem there that we need to be aware of that we could help with?
There are about 6 funds that we can all get behind. And as people would call, we really try to direct them to those 6 funds. It's on a website called rebuildjoplin.org, along with a whole list of what people need and what people have to give as a way of coordinating that effort. But I think it is, to your question, very important, probably early in the process, to make sure that communities think about the long term and think about the entities that they have or that they may need to create, such as these foundations, in order to bring dollars in and essentially have them in the bank for the future, because people talk about returning to the status quo, SBA, FEMA, insurance, my bank will get me to the status quo. The reality is there is no longer a status quo.
I'm very proud of the Joplin community because of the way you did this, and as always, the best solutions are solutions that are done on a coordinated basis at the local level rather than from Washington. I mean, certainly I don't think anybody in Joplin would argue that FEMA was very, very important to the Joplin community and the federal agencies and the state agencies that came in to help. But for the long haul, I'm glad the solutions are being crafted at the local level. I don't think a lot of people realize that Joplin is a mecca for that entire region, even though the population of Joplin, people who lay their head down at night, may be around 50,000 people. There are over 200,000 people that travel to Joplin for school and for work and for shopping. And what would that do to that mecca status if your utility rates were 2 or 3 times higher than surrounding communities, which you could envision happening with this? So we'll continue to work on this. And can you update the committee on the efforts for the 1,500 that are still on the waiting list for housing, and why, what are the hang-ups? 2 months is a long time, and what do we need to do to make sure we clear that waiting list?
One of the things that we're doing is we're working as a state-led housing task force, because one thing we don't want to do is come in and say FEMA to tell Joplin this is the housing needs that you need. We want working with the community and with the state to see what their needs are and then what we can provide.
The entire delegation has been really united on all of these issues, and we're particularly united about getting Birds Point rebuilt. What are you hearing from where you sit about the rebuilding of the Birds Point levee, and is there anything that you want to share with the committee about that situation and what the Corps is telling you, and how quickly can those farmers expect to be able to get back in production with a levee that is replaced?
I've heard estimates as big as $10 billion for total impact as it relates to our flooding, Senator Cochran, along the Mississippi, to anywhere to the $2 billion in your neck of the woods as it related to the New Madrid. You know, one thing to keep in perspective is that 44% of all the American water that flows through the Mississippi, and 31 states are touched by the mighty Mississippi in the course of this. And it has a huge economic impact, and it is an economic engine. This is a real opportunity for us as federal government and stakeholders at the local and state levels to take some lessons learned from what we're seeing in Joplin and that coordination and that planning. I mean, in the midst of this terrible tragedy, we have a real opportunity to change the model. You know, our national framework for response is effective, and our counterparts are working hard every day to make sure these programs are in place and that we're utilizing the programs in a very efficient and effective manner. But this is a real opportunity to change the model.